The last video I talked about how game development is generally a bad career path, very difficult, very time consuming, incredibly high turnover rates, and people just have really unclear expectations when they're first getting into it. You know, if some kid came to me that's 18 years old and they just graduated from high school and they're like, "Oh, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. I saw your devlogs and I think I want to make video games. So I should I make video games?" I would tell them no. I don't think that person actually knows what they're getting into, what they're trying to sign up for, and I don't think that they're gonna make it very long. So I would recommend no, get a real job. I talked about this extensively, basically all the reasons, kind of more in depth, why it's just a very difficult industry to get into and be successful in the last video. And in this one, I was going to do this video at some point, but since the last one is getting more attention than I was expecting, I figure I'd follow it up a little bit sooner rather than later. Majority of people don't actually want to make games. They think they do because it sounds cool and it sounds flashy. They get started a week later, 3 months later, 2 months later. They give up when they realize what's actually involved. But there are people, not everybody, but there's a few percent of people who actually want to make games. And that's who this channel has been for the entire time. The last video was kind of a random one that's not really for the target audience, just because I see a lot of new developers are watching this channel, even though that's not who I'm trying to speak to. So this one, I'm getting back to you guys, back to the target audience here, the people who actually want to make games, because I want to give you guys some encouragement, because you guys are in a good position. If you've been making games for 5, 10, 15 years and you've gotten through those filters that most people give up after, right? If you've released a handful of games, if you've, you know, learned an engine, you've learned the basics of marketing, you've started building a little bit of an audience, if you've started doing the actual things, you're actually in action, you're in a good position. Again, that's still obviously, that doesn't guarantee you anything, but the hardest part is learning everything and not giving up during that process. That's what makes it so, one of the main things that makes it so difficult. And that's where most people give up. So if you're still here after 10 or 15 years or 5 years or however long, and you're starting to get a little bit of a grasp on things. So I want to talk to you guys now, because the last video, it probably sounded real pessimistic. Personally, I think it's just realistic, because it just, look at the numbers. Most people don't make it. They just don't. We can't all make it. And most people who start in the industry, they give up. That's just how it is. But the people who are still here, you are the ones that have a chance, that actually do have a chance, that have stuck with it long enough to get through a lot of those filters, who actually genuinely want it. So, talking to you guys. The first thing you got to realize is there's very little different in the development process. There are differences, but the difference between a $10 million game and a $10,000 game is a lot smaller than many people would realize. A game that's, competent, that's getting decent reviews, that people are enjoying, but just isn't reaching a mass audience. Like, the development process, like going through fixing bugs, designing your art, building your levels, making your main menus, making your settings menu, getting your translations, all that stuff is kind of the same from one game to another. And the big difference is just how you're implementing marketability into the project. Now, that part is, that obviously, that does make it more complicated, but the development process around that is pretty much the same. So if you're at the point where you can make a decent game and get decent reviews, you are on the cusp of being able to make a hit. You're at the point where, even if you're shooting blind, you can shoot blind. You have the ability to do that. And you have the ability to start trying to take aim more accurately. I've talked about this a handful of times. Choo Choo Charles is not a technical marvel, but it's marketable, and it works with the audience that it's trying to reach. That's how A lot of successful games are. Most successful games can be ripped off pretty easily. Like, that alone is proof that you are capable. Like, if you can rip off a successful game, if you can make a Vampire Survivors clone, then you are capable of making a game that would blow up. But again, it needs to be marketable. That's the big thing that you need to focus on. So, a lot of people, they don't know kind of when they're at that point when they need to stop focusing as much on learning the development process and start transitioning to learning more about the marketing process. Many developers focus too much on the quality of the game and trying to make it as like technically superior as possible. And so they put in a lot of budget, they hire a bunch of employees, and they do a bunch of stuff, complicated stuff, really difficult stuff, in order to bolster the quality of the project, when that might not be necessary if they're just trying to get to the point where they can break even. So I think if you're at the point where you're getting, let's say, 100 positive reviews, if you can get over like 80-90% positive reviews on like Steam, and you can get, over 30 of those, then you're probably in that capable category. And that's not a huge number of people, right? That is not a huge number of people. That's why I'm being so positive now all of a sudden. Because the people that I'm talking to are the ones that actually have a chance. Okay, I'm not talking to the millions of people who just gave up after their first 2 months. I'm talking to the people who have a genuine chance here. And so if you want to know all the stuff that I think makes a game more marketable, I think that the main foundation is that and again, I talk about all this stuff extensively on this channel. Just go back and watch basically all of the videos. The key is like, okay, you need a game that both gets a lot of attention and it converts that attention at a high rate. Those are the two key factors that are going to determine a game's success. There's not really anything else that's going to determine it, right? How many people see it and how many people buy it. That's the equation. So increase those variables to as large of numbers as you can. And the way that you're going to do that is by making use of human instinct, nostalgia, behavioral psychology, and algorithms. That's basically it. Again, that's not necessarily super fun. That's part of what, where it's like, okay, you want to make a profitable, successful game. Again, you don't need to do all of this stuff. You can shoot blind, or you can, just implement a handful of things and see if it works. You can do it however you want, but the results are going to reflect the level of effort that you're putting in, I suppose. At least generally. And so if you understand how that stuff works, and you can implement that stuff into your game, your odds go way up. Most developers, they are not... I think the general sentiment is starting to shift a bit, where developers are talking less about just like, oh, to be successful, you need marketing. You need to post on social media. People are starting to be like, okay, marketability is a factor. But I think a lot of people are still really behind on what that actually means. People are like, oh, you need hooks. That doesn't really mean anything. So getting deep into what it actually means to have something that is engaging and intrinsically captivating, that's what's, really probably going to set you apart and give you a leg up. The other big thing that I think is really, really, really interesting about the game industry and about people who are in this position is this is one of very few industries where a single person can sit in their home office on a pretty standard gaming computer and on a more or less $0 budget, maybe a couple $100 minimum, right? Because you got your Steam fee and maybe a couple pieces of software. On almost a $0 budget, you can make hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. There's not a lot of ways that you can do that. There are not a lot of industries, outside of maybe if you were to become like a YouTuber or streamer, or like a crypto trader, or start doing like some meme coin pump and dumps. Hey, who wants to buy some Hawk Tua coin, right? Like, there's not many ways to do this. Most businesses that are going to be earning, their owners hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars are going to require a lot of money in and a lot of employees. Now, I don't really have any experience in other types of business, so I can't say for sure. But looking around and seeing the other people, online that talk about money or that talk about business and stuff like that, none of them are, they're all talking about how, like, oh yeah, we just started making, I don't know, X many $1 million gross in the business, and we've got 300 employees or 100 employees, or we had to raise $20 million in investor capital. And it's like, most businesses require such a large push from other people and additional funding to get off the ground, that if you understand how to make games and you can make marketable games, you're in a really, really, really unique position to be able to print money out of thin air, essentially. Again, it's difficult to get to that point where you can. There's so many filters that prevent most people from getting to the point where they are capable of that, because there's so much to learn. You got 5-10 years of prerequisites. We talked about this in the other video. But if you're one of the ones who actually wants to make games, and you actually get through all those filters, and you're one of the 1% of people, or maybe even less than that, that's really on track, you're in a very, very promising position. I think learning marketability is I think it's relatively easy in comparison to all the other skills that you need to learn in game development. At least it was for me. I think as soon as my mindset kind of shifted and I realized, oh wait, marketability is really the key. Like, as soon as you can make a decent game, marketability is almost all that matters if you want to, be profitable. As soon as I made that mindset shift, and that's what I started focusing on, it became a lot easier to try and figure out how to make something that people would be interested in. Again, does it suck the fun out of it? Yes, it does. But if you've been doing this for 10 years, you might also want to get paid. You might want to get paid for all the effort that you've put in. It might be worthwhile at this point to crank out a couple of profitable games and then, do whatever. It is a huge opportunity. And, I'm not really saying anything here, in the whole, like, emphasizing how close a lot of people are, that a lot of people don't already realize. If you've been doing it this long and you're in this position, you're probably fully aware that, like, your next game could be a hit. You're probably fully aware that you could learn more stuff and increase your skills. You probably already know that. So I'm not really saying anything that crazy. But I just wanted to, because, in the last video, there were a lot of people who were like, but I want to make games. I've been doing it for 5 years. Of course I want to make games. I'm reminding you guys, yes, if you're already making games, if you actually want to make games, then, like, then great. You're past the filters. And it's a spot that I think a lot of people get stuck in. There's a lot of beginner advice, because ultimately that beginners are the easiest people to profit off of in any kind of educational space. So, because there's a lot more people at square one than there are at square 50. So, that's who the tutorials are for. That's who the courses are for. That's who the everything is for. And once you've completed all that stuff, now you're sitting there like, okay, well, I've got decent games, but now what? And so you kind of get stuck. That's where a lot of people get stuck, is that they're like right on the cusp of being able to do really, really well, but just not quite getting past those last couple of hurdles. The goal with this channel, I just want to get a couple of people past those hurdles. I know that not everybody is going to get this stuff. I know that not everybody is going to take it seriously. That's fine. a couple of people will. And that's the whole goal. I want to say the things that I think are actually going to be useful, that are actually going to be valuable. I'm not trying to be pessimistic in these videos. I'm not trying to be unrealistically encouraging either. I'm just trying to give you as real a picture as I can paint of the things that I've found. Ultimately, I think that just good information, true information, it's the best thing that you can get towards progress. It allows you to make better decisions. Whatever the decision is, whatever your goal is, having information to base it off of is going to allow you to make those decisions more effectively. That's about it. Best of luck to the ones who actually want it.